Okay, welcome everybody. We're starting to see people streaming in, so hopefully all the technology is working correctly on your end. Looks like it. It is 6 o'clock, so we do like to get started here and just respect everybody's time. I'm Becky Bellini. I'm one of the counselors at Cal High.
And I'm Kelly Falcone. I'll be the other presenter tonight, also a counselor.
And we are here tonight to basically do like post high school planning 101. So we know a lot of 9th and 10th grade parents are feeling a little unsure about what their students should be doing now, how they can support their students in getting ready for what comes after high school, whether it be because this is your first child or, it's been a long time since any of us were doing our post high school planning, or maybe you were post high school planning in another country or what have you. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might feel like just not sure what this current moment is supposed to look like for you and your family. So this is a little bit of like a 101 kind of presentation. So really introducing kind of the basics, giving you some good overviews, just so you kind of know what to expect in the next year or two as things kind of start to ramp up when it comes to post high school planning for your student. We said this in the email, but we did give this basic same presentation last year. So if you recognize this and us and you were here, welcome back. It is going to be about the same presentation. Of course, you're welcome to stay, but that's kind of the disclaimer. Before we kind of get into what we're going to go over tonight, I'd like to show you what we have coming when it comes to all the information we're going to be getting out to you over the next couple of months. One thing, I think we have the Q&A activated on here, and there is only 2 of us running the meeting, so we will try to answer questions as they come. But know that usually the things that people have a lot of questions about, like course registration and all that type of thing, we have separate information nights for all of that depending on your student's grade level. So if you have questions about the things you see on the screen now, registering for classes, etc., like real grade level specific things, we will have a separate information night, links and all that forthcoming coming up. So that all of this will be coming up quickly within the next month or so. But this is just so you have an idea of what you might not be hearing about tonight, but will be hearing about soon. And we do like to think about with the questions, if you have them and you type them in, really trying to stay focused on what the scope of what we're here to talk about tonight, because I know that there are so many questions about so many things when it comes to our students and their schooling and all of that. And it's hard to kind of talk about everything in 1 hour. So we really are focused on 9th and 10th grade students and families and that kind of planning ahead and what we should be doing now. So that is really what we're going to really try to stick to, what we're talking about tonight. So diving right in terms of timeline. So what we get a lot of is both students and parents asking, well, what should I be doing now? Like, what's the most important thing for me to be doing now? So we kind of have very simply laid it out, right? Our 9th grade students are really, they've just finished their first semester. They're just getting exposed to having, being at a large, almost 3,000 student campus, learning about how to try to stay focused in this new environment and really building good habits. So our freshmen have just completed their first grades that are on their transcript, and a lot of them have learned a lot of important lessons, right? About managing extracurricular activities, what it means to take notes and study in class. And those are things they're going to keep learning. And those are really what 9th graders should be focusing on. And obviously, in addition to having their eyes open to what other things are here at the school that I might like to get involved in, which leads us right into 10th grade. You kind of have your bearings a little bit more as a Cal High student in 10th grade. And now you're looking for other things to add on to your experience as a high school student, right? Clubs, sports, etc. What are the other things that I want my high school experience to be about? Not, just going to class and studying, but really, what am I interested in? What are the things I want to explore? 11th grade, obviously, those commitments and involvements deepen. We want to see students challenging themselves appropriately. So not taking on too much in terms of academics, but not having enough that they don't kind of have to work for it. We want to kind of really try to help them find that balance. And then really start making that list of options after high school. Maybe those are four-year colleges, maybe those are other opportunities that we'll get into tonight. But junior year is really where they should be starting to think about what comes next. And then obviously in 12th grade, we kind of have broken it down into two categories. The fall of 12th grade is really the time where if you're applying to four-year colleges, that's really where it all takes place, right? The applications open at the very beginning of the school year in 12th grade, and that's really our focus with students. And then in the spring of the 12th grade, if students are going to a four-year, they're making their decisions, they're figuring out where they're going to go. And then if you're going to a community college or a trade school, the application and enrollment period starts at the end of their senior year. So that's really kind of a shortened and basic timeline of kind of what you should be thinking about as we go through. So if you're sitting here with a ninth grader as at home, you should be thinking like, oh, okay, maybe I don't need to be getting into the nitty gritty of which college we're thinking about yet, right? We don't need to be worried about that quite yet. So this kind of gives you an idea.
Excellent. So shifting a little bit into talking about what some of these different post-high school options are. Four-year universities tends to be the most complicated, right? There's the most requirements to get into these, which is why we tend to spend more time talking about it, just because there's more things to need to know about them. So we're going to start off with our in-state public four-year options. So those fall into two different categories. The first one is our California State University system that has 23 campuses. It's also often you'll hear us talk about it as the CSU system. These are our flagship institutions. They're the most affordable four-year options for our kids. And really kind of how I conceptualize the difference between this versus our University of California or UC system. CSU tends to be more hands-on, project-based versus the University of California that has more of a research focus. And in thinking about that, it does affect the student experience and what their professors are really there to do, right? The CSU professors, they will have some research opportunities, but they are there to be teaching, and UC, they have their research programs and things they're doing. And again, these are broad strokes. That's not true of every class and every campus, professor things, but those are just kind of broad strokes. UC campus is a little bit more expensive. There's also fewer of them. There's 9 UC compared to the 23 CSUs that I mentioned. And we're very lucky in that they range across the whole state. We have quite a few of both types here in our backyard from San Ramon. So really incredible opportunities here, some of the most world-renowned institutions within our public school systems. Outside of that, there's private universities. These are not funded by public dollars, whereas the other two are. There are obviously private institutions in California and outside of California, and then out of state that, as it implies, are out of state. We have students that do all of these options. I would say in pretty good varieties. If you did one of these, you're not going to be the only student who's looking at out-of-state options or the only student who's going to our CSUs. There's lots of students that do all of these things. And we'll get more into the requirements in a bit for those different institutions. For our two-year college, often called community college or junior college, all the same thing. The closest ones for us are DVC, Diablo Valley, and Las Positas, which I feel like the kids just call LOSPO. But lots of benefits to this path. It does create a less stressful high school experience because it's not selective admissions. If you apply to a community college, you know you will have a spot to attend there. So with that, there is also a significant cost savings. You're saving not only on like the application fees and things, and I do need to update this because I just learned that Las Positas is also doing first 2 years free, and that's not just for students who qualify. It's any first-time students who do fill out a financial aid application, whether or not you qualify. So I thought it sounded too good to be true at first when I first started hearing about this a handful of years ago, but it is as good as it sounds. So really something to think about there. Another great thing about the 2-year path is There can be higher acceptance rates for transfer students, right? Just less, if we're in the funnel, there's less competition when they get to the transfer. And it's great for students who maybe had a few bumps during their high school experience and they have gained a lot of maturity and get a clean slate after they graduate from high school. What I do like to say, this is a basics presentation, so going back to basics, for some students, they think that if they start at the 2-year college, it means they have 2 years there, and then when they transfer to 4 years, they would have 4 years. When the reality, you're working on your requirements at the 2-year college to be able to have less time at the 4-year university when you get there. So you're not necessarily increasing the length of time you're in college by doing this path. All right, career technical education. Some of this is at the community college, which is a great place to explore it. I have just a handful of the programs listed on the screen here. I will give a special shout out to construction and welding because we have concurrent enrollment programs for students. They can take those as juniors and seniors with part of their day at Cal High and part of their day on the college campuses doing these things. And I don't know about you, Becky, but my student, I have a student in the welding program and he just really seems to be loving it. So I think we all have stories like that, just really hands-on, and the professors are excited to be sharing what they have with younger students. So unlike the community college where you're doing some of your general ed requirements, right? Kind of, I always described it as students as like the appetizer platter where you're getting a little bit of everything. Students doing a career technical education program, it's going to be very specialized to what they're learning. So that's a great option for students who, when they're in their area of interest, they're really zoned in. But the idea of taking a bunch of classes that may or may not be up their alley doesn't necessarily suit their interests. We also do have a career fair every spring, so students get to hear from these programs. I will also say the military can be a great path for students looking at some of these things where they get on the job training, and that can be a path towards a career or towards future education as well.
Great. So as Kelly mentioned before, students applying to four-year colleges, there's just kind of a lot more to know and talk about. So we need to spend more time talking about that just because there's more to say, right? So we're going to talk about requirements and courses that students need to take if they are planning to apply to 4 years versus if they're planning to graduate high school and move to either community college or trade school, et cetera. So that's kind of what we'll delineate between the two on the next few slides. So A through G requirements is kind of the general requirement that we use because they're the courses required by CSU and UC systems for admissions as first-year freshmen right out of high school. And these are fairly standard across the board when you look at private and out-of-state institutions as well. They very, very closely align with these, but they won't be necessarily the same across every university. So it is on the student to do a little research if they're applying outside of the UC and CSU system. But this really is a good go-to because it will most likely cover most of what they need. So we'll cover all of that. There's 15 different prep courses they need, and students must earn a C- or better in the course for it to count towards eligibility. Again, typically other schools have the same requirements, so it's a good baseline for us to know. Okay, so you can kind of see in the table, we go through the different areas on the left. So social studies is the first area. You see that it doesn't it's not associated with the actual word. It's just the A. It's the first one. The A through G is social studies A. They need for high school graduation. This is actually, I think, maybe the only one where more is required for high school graduation than for college admissions. So students at our school are going to take 35 credits of social studies while they're with us. It's 5 credits per semester. So at 9th grade parents, they're in World Geo this year. And then they go to World History, then US History, then Gov and Econ for their 4 years with us. For CSU and UC, they're really only looking at the World History in 10th grade and the US History in 11th grade. And then there's also a little bit more you could say about that with the US history and gov, but our students take world history in 10th grade and US history in 11th grade. So that covers that requirement for UC and CSU. For English, they are required 4 years. So every year they'll take a full year-long English class, and that's across the board. So for graduation, for UC and CSU. For math, so the C area, it's just 20 credits or 2 years required for high school graduation, and one of those years they need to successfully complete Algebra 1. The vast majority of our students go above that 2 years of math and do 3, usually 4. So for the CSUs and UCs, they must get through Algebra 2, and then a 4th year is recommended. In the course registration presentations, we'll talk a little bit more about the math pathway, but those first are kind of like the big 3. And then from there, there's a few options. And we really do recommend almost all of our students take math every year, just as kind of a standard recommendation. The next category, did you push it, Kelly? Frozen a little. There you go. Science. So for high school graduation and CSU and UC, it's 2 years required. 1 physical science and 1 life science. And from our students, it's usually that life science is biology in 9th grade, sometimes 10th grade, depending on what they've chosen. And then that 1 year physical science, it's either chemistry for most of our students, or some of them choose to take physics instead, and that's fine. And then for CSU, that's the requirement. For UC, a recommendation is a 3rd year. And again, I would say the majority of our students take at least that 3rd year of science, and oftentimes more. They take science every year. World language. And so you'll see this next part, that it kind of depends if you're going towards high school graduation or 4 years. So for a world language, is not actually required to graduate high school. You don't need to take any years of world language for high school graduation, but 4-year colleges are looking for 2 years of the same language or through that 2nd level. And again, for UC, recommended 3. You kind of see that pattern, right? The CSU kind of has a requirement, and then the UC, in a lot of the areas, they also recommend another year. And then with a visual or performing art, that's, ceramics, photo, digital photo, choir, theater, band, etc. 1 year for both of the CSU and UC system. And then for the vocational or applied art, not at all required for college. But if a student is just going for their diploma, going to a community college or trade school first, they can actually choose any 2 of those 3 areas. So they could do 1 year of world language and 1 year vocational art and no performing art, or a year of visual art and vocational art, but no world language. So it's 2 of those 3 to earn their diploma. Okay. So you'll see the next one is health. That is not an A through G required course. 1 semester is required for high school graduation, not at all required by the colleges. Same thing with PE. It is required that they earn 2 years of PE, 20 credits of PE. That's not part of the admissions for colleges. And then finally, electives. I'd say this is maybe the area that causes the most confusion for people. Because students will look at that and say, I need to earn 60 credits of electives. Like, how would I have time to do that? And so that gets a little bit confusing, because if a student takes, let's say, 4 years of math instead of the required 3, that extra 10 credits that they earned in math will be taken from those 60 credits of electives. So if students take extra science, a 3rd year of world language, a 4th year of math, etc., those will all chip away at those 60 credits. I've never had a student take 60 credits of just an elective course. It's not really possible. So pretty much the electives is not something a student's ever going to need to worry about in terms of making sure they meet it. And so this last part, for high school graduation, our students need to earn 220 credits to graduate, and they must earn a grade of a D- or higher. So if they get a D- or higher in any of their classes, they earn those 5 credits. But for colleges to actually count the course towards eligibility for admission, they need to earn a C- or better. So you'll start, if anyone's student did earn a D- D or D minus in first semester, that's where we'll start talking about summer school. That's where summer school comes into play, where they can remediate the grade they originally took for a higher grade down the line. Okay, I think we're, this is still me, this is still me. Okay, so the next, this has changed a lot, right? This is one of the things that really changed a lot during COVID, right? It was pretty standard that if you were applying to four-year colleges, you needed to take the SAT or the ACT, and a lot of students took both of them. And that is really something that has changed, maybe for the better, through all of this. So we're going to have a lot of students that do not require an entrance exam, even though they're applying to four-year institutions after high school. We have the ACT that's run through an organization called the College Board, and the other option is the ACT. A lot of students also end up taking AP exams. These are the exams taken at the end of an AP course, but these are not entrance exams. They can be used to secure that college credit for the AP class, but the scores are not typically part of an admissions decision. Community colleges do not require the SAT or ACT ever. So some students will ask me, okay, well, if I go to DVC first, will I then take the SAT after 2 years? No, that is only for first-year freshmen starting their college journey, right? It says on here, CSU temporary suspension. It seems pretty permanent to us right now, but we don't know. But currently, students for both CSUs and UCs should, if that's where they're applying, they don't need to take this exam. So, and we have students that are so kind of, they always thought, and parents too, they always thought they would take this exam. Like, well, should I take it just in case? Well, no, if you're applying to UCs and CSUs, no one's ever they're not going to see it. So there's really no point in spending the time, which we all know is very valuable, and the money required to take these exams for a lot of students is just not necessary anymore. Private and out-of-state institutions, I'd say over the last year or two, some of the more prestigious universities have brought this back into their admissions calculus, but it's something that students and families want to research. So if you know you're applying to a certain school, you should go on their website, and we have a resource there too to tell you whether or not you need to take those exams. We really don't want students taking them just to see what they get. You know, we know our students already have a lot on their plate and a lot of things that cause them stress, and there's no reason to take an exam that they don't need to take. If taking, students will typically take these in the spring of their 11th grade year. And we, in the last several years, and I think in the coming fall, but there's obviously a lot of questions right now if you've been following the budget news of the district, et cetera, what our testing options would look like in the fall. We really don't know at this time, but we have the last couple of years offered the SAT on our high school campuses.
Excellent. All right, so you might be thinking, okay, so I hear they may or probably are not going to look at these entrance exams. You know they're going to look at your grades. What else would a college be looking at when they're evaluating an application? So let's talk about some of it. Course selection. So what the students are picking, as Becky was saying earlier, we always are aiming for that sweet spot where a student is challenging themselves appropriately. They're not overwhelming themselves, but they are taking classes that interest them and show that they're willing to take some academic risks and put themselves out there and have classes of rigor. So what classes they're taking. Obviously, they're going to look at GPA and grade trends. I think that's probably one of the things everyone could have told us coming into this presentation tonight. This all works together, though. Those are one piece of the application, and it's an important piece of the application, but they're also, depending on the college, going to look at some other factors. Extracurricular activities, what do students do outside of the classroom? We kind of hear at a certain point that a college, they can see that a student is a great student. They've taken challenging classes, they've done well in them. So taking more and more classes and doing more school isn't necessarily rounding out the picture at all. So how is this student going to engage in their college campus and community? So that's why things like community service, work, part-time jobs, being involved in athletics, whether that's for the school or independently. Family obligations, right? Colleges are well aware that every family is different. Some families might need a lot more support from their student and have a lot more responsibilities than some other students, and that's all taken into account. I feel like the word we hear the most when talking about admissions that are holistic is the word context. So full transparency, UC, a lot more of this is true, whereas CSU, it is going to rely more on kind of those first two pieces, the classes you take and the grades that you get. Personal essays, right? So the chance for the student to talk about themselves and share their story a little bit, their own voice. Actually, I did have one more thing I wanted to say about extracurriculars. Some students will come into my office and say, Miss Falcone, how many community service hours do I need to have? And they may be surprised to hear that the answer is none. You don't need community service hours. I think it can be a great way for a student to get involved. Like we said, one of the kind of goals for our high school students is finding meaningful ways to do that. But my point is that that looks different for everybody. What might be a meaningful opportunity for one student will be different for another. And so just going in and trying to tick certain boxes because you heard it's good to have, I think is really misguided, because back to the essay piece and what made me remember it is the idea of student voice and getting to hear about what lights students up. It comes through so strongly. We've read lots of college essays at this point, and it just is really clear when a student is being genuine versus they're kind of going through the motions with something. With recommendation letters, some colleges allow for these. It's not going to be our in-state schools. These are private and sometimes out of state. But I think it's just helpful to think about, kind of almost as a thought exercise. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing questions. Becky, will you let me know if any of them are on topic? Thank you. I think it's a useful thought exercises for students to kind of sit down and be thinking, if I had to ask a teacher for a letter of recommendation, what might they have to say about me? Just to kind of put that out there, right? Are students able to contribute to a classroom in meaningful ways? And that doesn't have to always look the same. I know the power of introverts, it might not be raising your hand and participating, but a teacher might be able to say they're really thoughtful in their responses, or they are diligent about certain things, or they're always willing to help the person next to them. So just kind of thinking about that, I think is useful. Interview, I would say these are pretty infrequent, not super common, but that would be either live meeting or sometimes a Zoom meeting with a university representative. A lot of times it's like an alumni or something. But again, those are, I would say, the rarest of what we have listed here. And then lastly, the entrance exams, like Becky was talking about a few minutes ago.
One parent asked for a little more elaboration on grade trends.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So when we say grade trends, the colleges, they're not going to just see a GPA. They're going to be able to see how your transcript kind of tells a story. So it might be a story of, hey, the student has slowly improved and kind of built their study skills over high school. It might be, oh, they were doing great, and then clearly something happened, and then they bounced back. So just kind of what picture do the grades tell, like chronologically, right? Or maybe, oh, the student is really strong in this certain area. They always have the highest grades in their humanities classes or world language classes or what have you. So that's what we mean when we say grade trends. Okay. So quick notes about GPAs, because I think this is something that we get quite a few questions about in the counseling office. So a GPA, it literally stands for a grade point average. So that's what this is. All of the grades that a student earns are assigned a grade point. All right, so A's are worth 4 points, B's are worth 3 points, and so on. In high school, we do not differentiate between pluses and minuses. So an A plus is worth the same as an A minus, and so on and so forth. So it's just all those points added up, then divided by the total number of classes a student has. So cumulative versus term. Cumulative, it's the combination of all the grades a student has taken so far, versus a term is just the most recent grading period. So cumulative GPA, kind of like I said, the running total versus a term might be used for something more like sports eligibility, where they're wanting to look more at how you were doing recently versus the average of everything. Weighted versus unweighted. Honors and AP classes, those are both advanced classes that give an additional grade point. So instead of an A being worth 4 points, it turns into 5 points. That's how students end up with a GPA above a 4.0 is they've taken weighted classes. I will say D's and F's do not get weighted. So that's, again, part of the reason we really talk about balance. We know that those weighted points are attractive to people, but if you're taking on so much that you're not able to perform at a successful, right, passing standard, then it's actually hurting you much more than it's helping you, right? It'd be better to do okay in a college prep class than failing or not doing well in an AP or honors class. Okay. And then A through G GPA, we went over the A through G requirements earlier. This is only going to factor in those college prep classes. So like it says, classes like PE or teacher's aid don't factor in. This is really going to be what our UC and CSU campuses look at, right? They're not going to take into account that you got an A in PE, unfortunately, for some of us. So that's just a quick note about GPAs.
I do just want to say while you're changing, I'm seeing a lot in the chat that's kind of like very specific questions about certain AP classes or things like that. And like I kind of said at the top of the meeting, we really are focusing on just kind of what we're the general focus of, our presentation is like basics for post high school planning. There will be more information coming out in the next few weeks about which AP classes we offer, etc., and our recommendations on dealing with that. So we're gonna. So if your question isn't getting answered in the chat, it's just because there's kind of too much to manage in this moment for the two of us.
Yeah, I will say, I think people are using the chat. You can't respond to me other than in the chat. If you could use the Q&A, it helps us manage things a little bit better versus the chat. I will expand just a little bit. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. The weighted classes are weighted because they are more challenging, right? They are more difficult, more is expected of them. They're not held to homework policies in the same way. So one key difference is that with an AP class, at the end, you have a chance to take the AP exam to potentially get some college credit. So that's one key difference. But really, and we'll go into this much more deeply during course selection, but I'll never pass a chance to say that those should really be guided by student interests. We see students get into trouble when they're taking things just for that weight versus having a curiosity around a subject.
And a couple more questions that are related to this. Pluses and minuses do not impact the GPA in high school. It's different, usually a different story in college, but for your high school GPA, pluses and minuses make no difference. And no, colleges don't see the percentage you had in a course. I know that is the way some countries do their grading. Here, it's just the letter grade. The letter grade on your transcript is what the colleges will see, not if you were, like almost at the other grade. They wouldn't know.
Yeah, good clarification. So shifting gears a little bit, but I definitely think that the two things that we're talking about tonight are very interlinked. Career exploration, right? We talk a lot about how to get to college, but I feel like this is why are we going to college? What is the goal beyond that? What we're telling your students is it's okay not to know what career they're aiming for. It's not going to set them back that they haven't taken all these certain classes in high school in preparation for it, right? They're exploring their interests now. That's what's expected of them. We do have tools on campus right? It says Naviance/School Links. Right now, our kids have Naviance. They will be switching over to School Links in the fall, and that is our college and career readiness platform. And really, that's a fancy way to say it's a website where kids can go and look at different careers and colleges and learn about themselves and how they can get to those future goals. So right now, all of your students do have access to Naviance. On there, there's the career cluster assessment. It's something that they have. They can go on, answer questions about themselves, and it'll spit out and say, hey, have you explored these careers at all? And it's not to say that it's going to be what they end up doing. I think I got one once that said I was a park ranger. I'm clearly not doing that now, but then later on, I did get things that said like teacher, and that was more up my wheelhouse. So it's a useful starting point. Also in things of different career research, looking at what different jobs are like. We find that students obviously want to do the jobs they know about. That's what they're exposed to. So the goal is to help them learn about jobs they might not have otherwise heard, to open those horizons a little bit and be able to picture themselves in a role that might fit them all that they didn't know about a year ago. So we really do love the idea of part-time jobs. We're big proponents of that in the counseling office. We think it provides a really valuable experience for students. Having kind of a different lens in which to practice responsibility and professionalism and time management and working with different people who come from all walks of life, right? As you might run into at a part-time job. So we recommend that for summer for either part-time job experience, volunteer opportunities. It's a great way to explore different careers as well. All right, so finding your fit, what makes sense? Fit is what we talk about when we are saying you are you. We need to find a place that is a good match for you, not the other way around, right? You shouldn't be trying to fit some mold of this place. You're going to still be you there. So how do we find what makes sense at that place? So students will be successful where they're happy and connected, right? So research has found that prestige doesn't have to do with a student's experience or success. So when considering postgraduate plans, we're really trying to think about what the student's goal is. So we talked about earlier, as I brought up with like trade schools, maybe a student wants to get to this career where they're very excited about what they're going to be doing. Maybe they want to have a research opportunity. Maybe they want this hands-on learning. What institutions can best fit those different priorities for a student? In thinking about all this, every once in a while we'll get asked questions about private college counselors. So we're not going to tell you what to do for your family. That's a personal decision. But what we can tell you is that most of our students apply to college successfully without the help of a private college counselor. And that if anyone is telling you they can guarantee some outcome, to put it lightly, you should run in the other direction, right? That's just not true or accurate. And it's a big red flag. So we listed some questions that you'd want to be clear about before pursuing this, right? Have you exhausted the free options at school? Are they just giving you information that can be found online? Is this person actually offering you the services that you need? For many students, I feel like, Becky, you're welcome to jump in there. I've seen that the role of a private college counselor is more just like task management and accountability, which is what some students do need. But other students are really hoping for a different kind of support that they may or may not end up getting. So just being really clear about that. Also confirming professional organizations that this person's accredited. Having gotten into college themselves is not accreditation.
Yeah, we've heard of students who like current college freshmen and sophomores offering this type of service. And so you just have to be really aware of who's saying they know what. and just be really discerning about that.
Yeah. We have up here, doing your best is more important than being the best, right? So post-secondary planning is going to look different for every student. They're all unique individuals. They all have their own struggles. They all have their own strengths. So we really do our best not to make our advice one size fits all. And we hope that you can use the same lens when you're being told, oh, your student should be doing this or your student should be doing that. You know your student best. They know themselves best. So what feels right for them might not be right for the person sitting next to them, and vice versa.
Great. So I think most of our audience tonight are parents, and hello, students, if you're here with us too. One of the questions, of course, is as a parent, how do I help my student through this? It's obviously a really important time of transition. These 4 years, we really focus on high school not being a means to an end. High school isn't just about getting into college, right? High school is it's a 4 year period of incredible personal growth and transformation and experience and all of those things. And so we really like to pull away from overly focusing on the next thing. Let's focus on this thing a little bit before before it's over, and it goes by in a flash, as we all know. And so we really like to think of this as, the adults set the tone of this process. And we've become so used to there being just this fear around a shortage. There's this perceived shortage of opportunity after high school that is simply just perceived, that is not real. There are so many paths to a college degree, to a successful future, whatever that looks like for each person is different. And so our kids need us to be that kind of sturdy leader that's reminding them that this is supposed to be fun too. And while thinking about after high school, especially when you get to senior year and you've got your applications out there, of course it's anxiety producing because it's the biggest decision you've made yet in your life. And it's a huge change and really normal and natural to have some anxiety and nerves around all of that. But where we get concerned is when it really turns into more of a negative experience than an exciting time. And that's where we like to just keep bringing it back that they rely on us to remind them that this isn't a fun and exciting time. And so that's what we're asking. Like we always bring that to the table as their counselors. And that's what we want to invite you to get on that board. It's a lot more fun over here. So we really need to encourage balance in our students. It's really easy, and then sometimes we can hear this from the private college counselor, well, they want me to put more AP classes on. Well, the easy answer is always to do more. That's the easiest thing to say. But we know that all of that comes at a cost. So it's the parent's role to be balance keeper. That, hey, do we have time for this in our family? Is this something that we have time for, all of us? Because we know parents, you're driving too, you're involved in all of this too. Do you have enough time for sleep? If you do this, if you sign up for this many courses, right? That's the conversation that we're going to be asking you to have in the next few weeks. Does this make sense for our lives and for your life and your life outside of school? Are you going to have time to get enough rest? Are you going to have time to see your friends? What about these other things you enjoy doing? How is that all going to work? They need us to ask those questions. Time with friends, connectedness to their community, whether it be family, religious activities, hanging out with friends, sports, all of that is, in our minds, holds equal importance to their growth. And I really like this required deliberate rest. They really do need sleep to optimize their mental health and well-being. They need about 9 hours. And I know most of our kids aren't getting that on a consistent basis. So we kind of need to chime in every now and then and make sure they're getting caught up where they can. Really trying to avoid comparison, whether it be to your experience. I mean, they think that we went through this like 100 years ago, so it's usually not helpful when you bring up what your experience was, I find anyway. Whether it be to yourself or to the neighbor or to your older child, trying to avoid that comparison, because we all know that all kids are different and they experience things in different ways. And people are already doing that a lot themselves, especially adolescents, right? Doing that comparison a lot already on your own. And they don't need the adults in their lives to chime in on that too. So really trying to focus on them as individuals. Providing the practice for this self-advocacy and independence while they're in high school. And that is not to say that parents are not welcome to be part of the process, to reach out to us to talk with the teachers, please don't ever feel you're not welcome to do those things, because you absolutely are. But what we like to do with students, especially when they come to us with something with a teacher, we kind of talk through how they might try to approach it on their own first. Um, and then if they need more support through that, then of course we step in. But trying to kind of level them up when it comes to self-advocacy and independence as they move through their 4 years of high school. And then finally, that emotional support, right? This feeling connected at home and at school, those are really protective against student distress. So if they know they have really, it's one or two friends, they have a strong adult in their life, or maybe, their parents or a teacher or a coach or a neighbor or whomever that they know is there to support them, that really helps them through. We really want students to feel like they can come to us with their problems when they have them, and that we are going to be that calm person that will help them figure it out. Okay, so next steps for your student, right? As we keep saying, being a student is more than academics, it's being part of a community. So if you have a ninth grader now, right, let's start, we're halfway through the year, so thinking about one, as we talked about before, yes, learning those good study habits. What does it mean to be a good student? But also, what does it mean to be a student at this school? Maybe it's going to check out a sports game, or maybe it's going to check out a mock trial competition or whatever, right? There's like a million different things that they could be doing. And I think we have a list of 100 clubs. So do they have time to kind of be poking around a little more and seeing what else is out there? And that leads right into exploring interests, like thinking about what am I interested in? We talked about the Naviance surveys, and some students have just simply no idea, which is also completely normal, but kind of starting that research process of just seeing what's out there. Practicing balance. We say this all the time to students, so it's just okay. It's actually not possible to do it all. It's not only okay to not do it all, it's not possible. So we really want to focus on well-being, being authentic in the why you're choosing to participate in something. And when it's for a college application, it's usually pretty obvious, right? So we want to be thinking about, you have this one time, this one chunk of 4 years. How do you want to spend that time in a way that's authentic to you? And again, just reminding ourselves, it's so easy, even myself, it's easy to get caught up in the, well, maybe she should be doing more. Maybe they should be, kind of checking ourselves. And I'd say as parents, finding your people within your own community that you can talk about these things with, right? Like, hey, we were thinking about having them do this activity, like talk that through with me. Like, that's been helpful for me as a parent, as raising my kids in this community too. And then again, building those strong habits of study and organizational time. Those things take time and help. Some students have it innately in them, and they're color coded and their backpacks are organized, and some students do not, and they might need a little help from you on that. And again, asking for help when they need it from either us, you, their teachers, etc. We have a few recommended reads, and we are always looking for resources that speak to these things. These are specific to what we've been talking about tonight. We have like other mental health resources that we'll share in future presentations, but these are very specific to what we've been talking about tonight. Never Enough is a book that came on our radar, I think, last year. It is, I think, really speaks to families in this community where it feels like we're just never doing enough. So it talks about, how that can be dangerous for our kids and some ways to kind of get out of that. The next book is about college admissions specifically for families, again, trying to focus on making it a positive experience for everybody. And this How to Raise an Adult came onto our radar, I want to say like 10 years ago, and it's never left, because it is just, it's so good about thinking about how we can help our kids be more independent. Because now if you're here, then your kids are, maybe 3 years away till, adulthood. And we want to make sure they're prepared and really easy ways for us to rethink about how we're doing things for them, and how we can help them do more things for themselves. I just saw a question about does it make sense for our students to read these? I think that How to Raise an Adult has a teen version. I don't. I think Never Enough might be dry for them, but maybe read it and find some excerpts would be a good thing to do for them.
The middle one, The Truth About College Admission. I think that one could be a good like family read. It's written in a way that's very short chapters, kind of quick and easy to get through, and some action items for everybody in the family. So I think that could be a good family family book club exploration there. Or, right, I know not everyone's a reader, so we do have podcast recommendations as well. Actually, if you wanted to kind of do a 2-for-1, the guys who did Truth About College Admission, they have one that's, I think, a podcast of the same or similar name, and they interviewed the woman who wrote Never Enough. So you could kind of get both of those in one little 30-minute podcast. So that could be a good option as well. Inside College Admissions, lots of quick bites from people who do admissions all day. College Essay Guy is one of my favorite resources. I can't believe that the vast majority of his stuff is free. He is excellent. He is the College Essay Guy, but he talks about a lot more than essays and covers a lot of different things on his podcast. So that's one I often have on in my office while I'm working. Dear Therapists, we had a specific recommendation that we were just buzzing about in our offices. We have it on there. Encore episode 14 is Libby's self-induced stress, and she could have been a student in any of our offices. And it's really her, almost like her getting a therapy session and talking through some of these things and kind of getting to the feelings under what she's doing and her choices, which I just found really amazing and very thought-provoking to listen to. So I would say that one's definitely worth your time if you're looking for something to listen to on your way to work or while you're cleaning your house.
I think we were near brought to tears with that one, just because it felt so. It just like you said, it could be any one of our students, and this kind of realization that she has during this episode, like we want for our kids. And I think if more parents and caregivers in their lives are thinking about these things, that maybe they'd be more likely to get it. And that one really spoke to all of us. And these are 3 things you could listen to, right? But there are so many resources out there. And I want to just say, like the other day, I overheard some students talking about Stanford, and someone says, it's really not that hard to get into. And then another said, yeah, you're right. And it's like, no, you are not right. So be thinking about, where are we getting our information? Because so often we hear students say, well, my friend said I should, or my brother said I should. And I think those are all really well intentioned, but there is really so much information out there for you that is, evidence-based and given by people who have made this their whole life's work, that you're much better off listening to than, random anecdotes that might not say anything about a bigger picture.
Yeah. I think that is the end of what we have prepared for you tonight. We do have a few minutes left. I was trying to keep an eye on the Q&A. Again, this is a basics conversation. I appreciate that so many of you have kind of advanced level questions. As always, please encourage your students to come and access their counselors. We are available for drop-ins for students, break lunch, and then depending on the counselor, before and after school. But a lot of times, honestly, most of us are there both. So please have them come by and see us. We love talking with your kids.
Just kind of seeing if there's anything else. Thank you. Not seeing anything else come pouring in. Remember, you will be hearing from us in the next week or so about our future dates that I put up in the first slide. So more information to come in the next month or so.
Yeah, the links to register for the Rising Info Nights are already in the newsletter that was sent out a couple weeks ago as well.
Yep, and we will be posting the recording of this along with the slides on our counseling website. Links right to our Cal High Counseling YouTube page that will have this and every presentation we've ever done virtually. So hours of enjoyment there for you.
Yeah, you could really go down a rabbit hole there.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. It was
Thanks,
lovely to
everyone.
spend time with you.
Have a good evening.